Hello. Does this work? Awesome. Yeah, my title of my talk is called Snap Back to Reality, Here Comes Gravity. I'm not sure this works though. Does this work? Yeah, previous. Yeah, now it works. Snap Back to Reality, Here Comes Gravity, inspired by Eminem lyrics, but it's also a good sum up of my journey, which I will go through in a bit. And also, I work a lot with simulations, virtual reality, AI, and all looks great and works great in the lab, but then real life happens. So snap back to reality, here comes gravity. Working in a corporation, we don't have budget for that. That technology is for gaming. So I will just give you a few of these examples of how I try to overcome these issues. Yeah, I'm Timmy. I'm from Oradea, from Romania. I started as a dreamer as a kid, and I always wanted to build my own experiences or replicate my dreams. And since I was a kid, I started to code. I learned how to build games. But also, as any other teenager, I got distracted and I wanted to be a rock star as well. So I started to play guitars while doing math and coding. So I was playing guitar 7 hours a day. And yeah, when I grew up, I told my parents, hey, I'm leaving home. I'm going to Copenhagen to study. They thought I'm studying engineering, but I actually went to do music. So snap back to reality, here comes gravity. I was homeless for 2 months, sleeping in the airport, like Tom Hanks in the movie The Terminal. So basically, I was hiding from security guards. Oh, the mic like this? All right, great. I was hiding from security guards and looking on a website, sleepinginairports.com. And I found really good tips where to hide. I learned all the flights by heart, so if somebody came to me, I was like, oh, I'm catching that flight or the other one. So yeah, I was playing music in pubs, in jazz pubs, blues pubs, to get some money to go to school, carrying my guitars in the airport, hiding from security guards. But then I was like, yeah, probably my parents were right. So I actually went and studied engineering instead. And it was this magical place, Aalborg University in Copenhagen. It was the old Nokia campus. And when Nokia went down, all the great researchers, UX designers, developers, they came together and formed a cluster of startups. But I also met a few other dreamers. I met David Helgeson and Nicholas Francis. They're still my mentors today. They're the founders of Unity Game Engine, probably the third largest company in Europe. I went, pulled their sleeve, and I was like, hey, I want to dream together with you. So I started to work a bit on their physics engine. It still sucks today, but it got better. So I started to develop a few experiences. But as a kid, I was fascinated by my grandma, like this babushka from the north of Romania. Doesn't speak Romanian really well, but she had this amazing gift of reading people. I mean, she had 13 kids, so she had to be good at understanding personalities, emotions, different needs. But I was like, how is she doing this? What's her algorithm? So I wanted to learn how to read people. So I got into cognitive science. So trying to program, understanding a lot about you from your eye movement. So I joined a startup called the iTribe. So we were developing eye tracking solutions back then. We were dreaming to create the future interfaces, helping disabled people interact with computers. But I thought that the money will be in gaming, so I did my own track with that company. I mean, I loved their vision. So I started to read emotions, and especially when you're daydreaming, when you get anxious, when you're stressed. So we were really brave. We were putting eye tracking in everything. When you're having a hammer, you look around and everything looks like a nail, so that's what we were doing. I thought it will save the world with eye tracking. We were putting it in a lot of devices. So I hacked Fruit Ninja, and you could play it with your eyes, and the eye is the fastest organ in your body. So first time I tried it, I broke the world record. We went to CES, and we showed it to Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, Palmer Luckey, founder of Oculus. And Palmer gave me a development kit of what became the Oculus headset. I took it back in Copenhagen, put an eye tracking system in it, and I looked at how our human eye perceives, different information, 3D models, headsets back then, you needed like crazy computers and graphical cards to make them work. But we found a way to, work with the term that's called foveated rendering, meaning that the objects that I'm looking at get rendered at the highest quality, and everything else gets compressed. So we're able to save a lot of, processing power and so on. But also interacting with your eyes, which felt pretty cool. So next, as I said, this magical place in Copenhagen, Lego had a creative studio there. And they're like, hey, you're the eye tracking guy, right? Like, yeah. Do you want to help us build a Star Wars game? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm a big fan of Star Wars. So they wanted to recreate a bit of the Jedi journey, but for the Lego Star Wars franchise. So I was like thinking maybe I should also write my thesis on the topic, like gaming and eye tracking as interaction. But eye tracking has this thing called Midas touch, the King Midas from the Greek mythology. He had this blessing and a curse. Basically, everything that he touched turned into gold, including his wife and kids. And that thing happens also in interaction design. Everything you look at gets selected, even if you want or not. So we had to find ways to go around it. So I built this game where basically you were looking at different spaceships and you could think when to shoot and lock on targets with your eyes. All good on paper, but then 2,000 kids at Lego World had to play the game. Kids can't stand still, right? They can't calibrate the system. All the Danish kids had blue eyes. I trained the system on my eyes, so it didn't really work. So then again, snap back to reality, here comes gravity. I was like, well, at least the investors liked it. So a few months after, we were acquired by Facebook. But I was thinking about what I built. And me, as a dreamer and naive kid, I said, I'll sue Facebook. So for 3 years, I was in a lawsuit with Facebook around my patents. I didn't want my technology to be found in consumer devices. I knew the power of reading emotions while you interact with media. I knew that if kids would play Beat Sabers and other games, basically reading their emotions, having personalized ads. But don't worry, I'm still friends with Facebook after a few years. But I went to California for a few months to try out the techs in there, to hand over the process. But I felt like a sour feeling, about the tech world. And I felt sorry that I quit my creative dreams so fast. So came back to Copenhagen, and I started in fashion. I was like really interested on where the hell are all the Vikings? Because I could only see hipsters wearing skinny jeans and Vans shoes and drinking coffee. So I was interested on like how can I dig deep into the Viking, symbolism and try to incorporate it in some, concepts with various avant-garde fashion brands, including Barbara Gogini and Ivan Grundal. So I was playing with that a bit, creating concepts, hanging around at photo shoots, trying to build some stories. But I realized that that's exactly the same thing I was doing in simulation and gaming and, creating a scene, writing a script. So then, again, the magical place, Volvo was like, hey, are you the eye tracking guy? Can you help us build some simulators because we want to build autonomous cars in the future and we want to see, what would be the next interaction method for people. The reason why I shared the story with you is that, as you could see, I tried a bit of everything, and it was a journey of self-discovery, but also trying to understand, am I a creative or am I a nerd? And I learned that I could be both, and critical thinking and creative thinking, that's where innovation happened at that intersection. What I learned also, is that you need a box to think outside the box. And for me, automotive was a pretty big box. You know, it's one of the most conservative industries, pretty boring. I was never passionate about cars, but here I am, leading the innovation department at Volvo, building cars, but looking also beyond it. What I learned also, how hard it is to move from vision to execution. And it changed my practice. Actually, one of my favorite verses, it's from Habakkuk 2:22, which writes, "Write your vision on a tablet and pass it on," right? At least that's what I thought for 10 years that it means. But actually, I studied that verse deeper, and what it says, it's write a vision with capital letters, so when you run with it, you're able to read it and remember it, which changed my perspective completely, also my practice, on like, how can you bring clarity to complex visions and dreams? And again, how many iterations you need to get there, like to build various products, prototypes, innovations in various, industries. And the most important lesson I learned, deciding what not to do. If you put all the art in the world in the biggest room, you get the biggest warehouse. Museums are about curatorship, what you decide not to put on the wall. And that's also what I learned with innovation, deciding what not to do, what not to push with technology, we should leave the poetry, the in-between, the imperfections here and there. I'll share a quick video also about, the journey at Volvo and what was the vision that inspired me. Let me see if it plays.
Origin to destination, A to B. The triumph of human civilization relies on our ability to cover ever larger distances. Travel is as essential to life as the blood in your veins. From the turn of the 20th century, the automobile has shaped the man-made world and profoundly enriched the way we live. It shifted our perception of time and space. Days and weeks on foot or horseback became hours on the road. The miracle of flight further amplified our ability to reach further and faster than ever before. But to fit in an increasingly systematic and mechanized world, we find ourselves having to behave more like machines. In our striving for efficiency, have we lost empathy for the traveler? Efficiency shouldn't be about how much more work you can squeeze into your day. It shouldn't be how quickly you can get to where you're going, but how you get there. What if autonomous travel can eliminate the stress that lurks between A and B? Could autonomous technology be used to provide a space for you to live your life on the move, whichever way you choose?
So that was a project I worked on for the past 10 years. I believed in that vision, right? So see how can we improve human life, how to do human-centric design and think about the traveler, not only the driver, but also people around the car. But I understood how complex it is. I understood how many sensors do we need. So I was looking at how to build those simulated scenarios. So with my experience from gaming, when I joined Volvo, I found this janitor room, and I put a paper saying out of order, so I was hiding there. One manager thought that I'm doing a project, and another one thought I'm doing something else, so people still don't know what I'm doing at work after 10 years. But I was building the VR lab there. I had a headset, and this was the car that got launched a few weeks ago, the EX90, first electric SUV from Volvo. And it actually took 10 years from sketch to actually see it on the road. And it's super, super emotional to see all the small details that you are contributing to. And for that, the XR lab increased, like we were about 80 people at our peak time. trying to help various departments from design to branding to marketing to R&D, ergonomics, even squeakiness department. I didn't know we have that, so people pressing materials in car to see if they squeak. So we were able to connect a lot of these use cases. And, doing car configurators, being able to look at your vehicle, configure it the way you want before you buy it. And this is a bit how it looks in the lab. We try to build simulators and train cars how to see the world, but also using VR and mixed reality to put the user in the context, to understand, how to react to various situations of autonomy, how to build trust between the human and the machine. We use Tesla suits because I'm a big fan of Ready Player One, so I wanted to build ultimate simulator, and working in a corporation, I had infinite budget to play around with all the tech I wanted. I built this tool. I was the first one to drive with a headset on. I called the police first. They said it's okay because they thought headset means headphones. So I actually took the car with the VR goggles, and I built this thing that I called Tinder for designers, meaning that as you drive, you could swipe between car concepts, dashboards, screens, and various designs to be able to validate it, and using eye tracking to see how efficient certain designs are. But of course, we didn't stop there. We also wanted to see how we could test various safety scenarios that are either too dangerous or too rare to test in the real world, like an albino moose, crossing the road. So we're simulating and looking, how do we enable collaborations between offices? How do we train people to work with these technologies? But in the same time, we were leading and spearheading this because we dared to try a lot of things. So I woke up one day, we were all over the news, like why Volvo is playing with this technology, everyone was wondering. And one other childhood dream of mine, it was to be at Mythbusters. So we went to Adam Savage, where I made two cars, a virtual one and a real one, disappear in the same time. We passed the test, so the myth wasn't busted. I was really, really happy. But then again, as you could see, for the first part of my career, I focused a lot on understanding emotion, building tools, and catering for efficiency, sometimes disregarding other aspects. Now, later, I'm focusing on storytelling. Where are we going in the future? How are we going in the future? And, of course, nudging emotion. So we built this lab where we believe that if we have enough diverse people and competences, I hired artists, theologians, philosophers that had nothing to do with automotive, but were really good at taking complex things about society, build scenarios for the future, and see how do we reinvent mobility. Because automotive, it's in a midlife crisis with borderline disorder right now. We're like, are we premium? Are we sustainable? Are we a tech company? Do we still do cars in the future or not? So we built this emergent lab, open innovation arena, where we foster a lot of cool collaborations and looking at how do we prepare for the future, for the unknowns, right? How do we do compounding vision, that my vision intersects with somebody else's project, and being able to build that further? A few years ago, I went to Media Lab at MIT, and I had instant crush on Neri Oxman. She is amazing, like biotechnologist, architect. We collaborated on a few projects, but I really loved her framework, the Krebs cycle of creativity, where she was saying that if we look in the world at, what surrounds us, and through science, being able to get information and convert it to knowledge, from knowledge through engineering, catering for utility, through design, being able to change behavior, and through storytelling and art, changing culture and society. And that changed my perspective and practice. I started to look at storytelling as the tool to, help executives, help designers, inform engineers into what to build next. And also, how do we look at the world in a holistic way, like policymakers, infrastructure builders, bankers, investors, developers? how do we build a vocabulary to describe the future that we all want to build? So I didn't want to stop only at automotive, so I co-founded the Point Labs, inspired by that intersection, where we actually look at every project that we do to take a bit of research perspective, a bit of engineering innovation, trying to see how it helps with human behavior, and actually build a better society. And of course, understanding instead of just learning. How do we convert learning to understanding, fitting all the pieces together? So every prototype that we make, informing different strategies for various organizations, but of course for ourselves. So if I wanted to go to storytelling, I wanted to learn from the best. So I called someone from Hollywood because, having my name at volvocars.com opens a lot of doors. So I called a hero of mine, Alex McDowell, who was like parent of world building. He was working on Fight Club, Minority Report, Black Mirror, and he had this foresighting capability, not only doing science fiction, but looking at the future with really high accuracy. So since we were in tribes, we were using metaphors to make sense of the world. And then with the printing press, everything became linear. Books, movies, newspapers, the way we communicate, the way we consume content. But now, with the emergence of VR and generative AI, we are able to go again to circular stories. So we have to research a lot about the world before we build it. So we started with learning from how he did Minority Report. I invited him to our lab. We worked for a few months together. And what's interesting with this technique and Minority Report is that Steven Spielberg came to Alex and said, hey, I don't have a script, but how does Tom Cruise go to work in 2040? So they were really good at asking Lexus what would be like a method of mobility in the future. They were collaborating with urban planners, city planners. They work with fashion brands to understand, okay, what would be the future of advertising. They asked Apple how people would interact with technology, and MIT to build a famous holographic system. What's interesting about this movie is that there are 120 patents associated with this movie. And the movie, they started to work on it in '95. Movie started in 2000. So 24 years later, we still see some of these technologies, just coming out right now. And we learned this practice. We started, to look at how we build worlds. So if you take healthcare system, right? The moment I walk outside the door, I interact with the world, with systems of systems. Even if I don't go to the hospital today, I interact with the healthcare system because I pay taxes. Taxes go into building hospitals and, different type of investments. So the way we build worlds, we take them from the world scale, city, neighborhood, and then the street corner, which is the container for stories. Stories that build systems. So we looked at what will Volvo be in 2050 in Jakarta, in Sao Paulo, in Detroit, in Gothenburg, in Bucharest. I'm pretty sure that, for instance, in Jakarta, a 3-ton electric vehicle won't make it, right? So how do we convert safety, which is the core value of Volvo, probably to healthcare, or maybe cybersecurity? It's still about safety. So we're thinking to rebuild our vision, and we built hundreds and hundreds of stories from the future that inform now our strategies. We work with the executive team to look, on what to design next, what concepts we can do beyond cars. And of course, how do we ask better questions about who we are, where are we heading? I'm a big fan of the Bauhaus movement. This is the curriculum from 1920s of what they were doing and teaching at Bauhaus in Germany. So you had architects like Walter Gropius, Macaulay Lodge, a great photographer and artist, a lot of painters. So I looked and thought, what's the Bauhaus in 2020s with generative AI, blockchain, immersive tech? How do we build a consistent vocabulary audiovisual vocabulary to build this type of projects. So one example that we did, I collaborated with this studio called Ouch from Istanbul. They're like doing this generative art. So we were commissioned by SpaceX to send the first art piece on the moon. And we did this sculpture that represents who we are as humans, our DNA. We collected a lot of data, and in February we sent this piece to the moon. We collaborated with CERN, with NASA, trying to understand, okay, what is all the research that we have about the observable universe, about humans, so basically who we are, but also on the larger scale. So we sent a small cube with the Infinity rover in February, and then at Cannes Festival, we premiered it to the EU Commission and to visitors there, where people could interact with the art piece on the moon real time. We would understand their emotions, and the piece would actually change real time on the moon. Basically, that's why SpaceX commissioned us. They wanted to test video latency from Earth to moon, but we said instead of just sending random videos, maybe we should do some art, right? Because we were thinking that maybe we can nudge people to think bigger. What if we can reach the moon someday? And I think I'll need to shut up soon. So one of the most important lessons I learned overall was not every door is closed, just push. As you saw from my stories, I was also always knocking at doors, always pulling somebody's sleeve. Hey, I'm curious, I want to learn, I want to collaborate with you, I want to build the future. So I encourage all of you to do the same. Thank you.